Let's get to the latest in the housing market. We are joined by Ron Butler, principal broker at Butler Mortgage. Great, Ron. So let's talk about unsold condos. Now, the focus here, Toronto, because that's the biggest market. But you're seeing signs of it in Surrey. But tell us what's happening with unsold condos in Toronto.
Well, it has reached an incredible level. We have about 1 full year's inventory, and that seems to continue up and up and up in terms of listings. There's really no sign that it's going to level off or that there's going to be any reduction in the near term.
And so these are unsold condos partly because why are unsold condos? Overbuilding?
Yeah, there's been severe overbuilding of very specific product categories. It's
small ones.
The tiniest of tiny condos. It's weird that in a country like Canada, where there's a consistent housing crisis for the last 10 years, that if you build very bad product, people won't take it. It's as simple as that. These were all condos designed for investors. They're roughly the size of a large hotel room. And only meant to be rented out, and simply a massive overbuilding of non-family units, non-800, 900 square foot units. Those hardly exist in most new construction projects.
So we're talking units of about maybe 500 square feet in some cases?
And lower, yeah.
It always amazed me that Toronto would approve this, because it seems to me rather like substandard housing. I mean, who wants to live in such a small space?
Well, Toronto's actual limit is 250 square feet.
Okay.
That's what the planning department has on the books. So it can go very small in Toronto, that's for sure.
And so the speculators, are they being hurt here? Are they had to put product on the market?
Yeah, we're seeing situations where there's up to 30% failure rate amongst closings. That is to say, people who bought pre-construction simply tell the developer they can't close. They're not going to find a mortgage. They're not going to. The developer can keep their deposits, and all the best. Some of those people will be litigated, but in many cases, the developer is, first of all, they let the rest of the condo units close, and then a few months later, they start to sell the other units that didn't close at a substantial discount.
Into a weak market.
Into a weak market with more and more inventory pouring in all the time.
Take us to Surrey, BC, obviously a much smaller market than Toronto, but it's similar signs?
Well, yes, very much so. There's just pricing errors. It's a pricing error. When you're looking 5 or 6 years into the future and you're saying, yes, I believe that the new price level will be X 6 years from now, and it is nowhere near X, you run into a severe problem, because there's stuff just down the road that's selling for 25% less. So how do you justify that extremely high price when there's a resale product on the market in relatively very similar units for much less? It just doesn't work.
And even in Calgary, there are some signs of overbuilding of condos?
There is some signs of overbuilding in condos. You know, my friends in Calgary have always asked me, like, why are we building these things at all? We have vast space here. We have easy systems to build new homes. We have nowhere near the same kind of regulation, nowhere near the same kind of development fees to build new homes. And there's certainly an adequate supply. So why do we build the condos? And the reality now is, again, 5 years later, when it's time to fill up the condos, when they're completed, there is it's nothing like Toronto.
Okay.
But there's some signs of weakness in that marketplace.
Again, Toronto, I'm sorry for being Toronto-centric, but what are we seeing overall in the housing market? Are we seeing weak prices?
We haven't seen much price reduction. And I should say this in the core. In the 416 core, we've seen very little, if hardly any, price reduction. But when you go out into the suburbs, there are significant reductions. If you look at Durham, the far regions of Peel, and in York region, there's definitely been, for the people who bought at the very peak in 2021, there's been absolutely a substantial price reduction, in some cases 15 to 20% down.
What about communities such as London, Ontario, or Kitchener that were caught up in this overflow from Toronto and where prices shot up?
So far, not much change, because those marketplaces they don't have a lot of new construction, not a lot of new housing being built, low-rise housing. So they haven't had that big an impact yet. However, Hamilton and Niagara are definitely experiencing some price reduction that's obvious to everyone.
89, of course, was the previous massive property peak, and it took years for, certainly in Toronto, for prices to get back to that level. Could we be looking at a substantial decline in housing? I know we've got a very varied market.
Yeah, it is substantially different in terms of immigration. If the federal government really does substantially reduce their immigration numbers, there's a possibility we will see that long stagnation, 5 years, 6 years before any prices started to move up at all. 1990 to 1996, hardly any increase in price from a drop of nearly 25%. But with enough immigration, then all bets are off. We don't know.
I suppose one bullish factor, Ron, we're very tight for time, lower interest rates. That's something supporting the housing market?
Absolutely. We're not getting back to 2.5% anytime soon, but it looks like interest rates are staying around 4%.
Ron Butler, always great hearing from you. Ron Butler has been our guest, and he's principal broker at Butler Mortgage. Coming up,